Recording, please. Okay, and so again, welcome to the RYA Scotland AGM 2024. My name's Brian Wilson, I'm the chair here, and delighted to have you all in attendance. This session has been recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards if you enjoyed it so much the first time. You want a replay, but it also means folks that can't be with us tonight can review and see what we've been up to as an organisation. The structure, very similar to previous agendas. If you've been with us, we've got a more formalised piece to execute at the front end as a company and a membership body. And then we'll follow up towards the end with updates from the board and staff talking about achievements and work in their individual areas. At the end, we took questions in advance, and I'll deal with the submitted questions then. And if you're still with us then if there's any other topics you want to talk about, we'll be delighted to take them then. So that's my plan. And with that, we'll just get into the formal section of the meeting. So we have apologies. Apologies are on screen, so I'm not going to read them. Are there any other apologies that need to be submitted to the meeting that people want to submit? You can either stick them in the chat or come off mute and let us have them. So I'll just pause for a second here. So I haven't heard anybody, and if it's in the chat, it's fine. We'll catch up with it as the session goes on. So then the minutes from the general meeting from last year were circulated with notice of this meeting. I hope you've had a chance to read through those minutes. I guess I would ask, did anyone identify any significant challenges with the minutes as presented? Again, feel free to use the chat or come off mute and let me know. So, okay, so again, I'm seeing nothing in the chat and I heard no one raised there. So therefore, can I ask that we get from the somebody who's there to propose the minutes from the annual general meeting of 2023? Again, if you could come off mute and just verbally confirm, please. So someone to approve, and then I'll need someone to second them afterwards as well.
I'm happy to propose.
Okay, Charlie, thanks. Charles Bird to propose. Can I have somebody to second?
I'm happy to second, Brian. Graham Russell.
Great, thanks, Graham. Embrace the silence. Okay, appreciate that. So that's that underway. Matters arising from the meeting, I've scoured the minutes and the team have as well. We do not have any matters arising from the minutes, which did reflect my memory at the time. But anyway, so I will move on. There's no matters arising. And go into the chairman's report. So since our last AGM in 2023, I'm happy to report the organisation is in good health. My fellow directors are speaking towards the end of the agenda, and we'll cover a great many of the fantastic activities and events and outcomes of the organisation. So I'm going to focus my time on two topics, both challenging in their own way. So I want to talk about funding first. Now Adam is coming up, so I'm not stealing Adam's content. He will cover this shortly, but we're funded through a combination of Sport Scotland funding from the RYA UK, and obviously income that we generate ourselves, typically through event fees. The Sport Scotland funding represents about 3/4 of our funding. And again, just as a sort of information background, the funding from Sport Scotland is awarded on a 4-year rolling programme, pretty much tied to the Olympics. Ahead of our so we had our 4 years, current 4-year period is up. We had to make a presentation to Sport Scotland for renewed funding. And in that, we were given a clear steer ahead of presenting that the absolute best we could hope for would be flat funding. There's a couple of very minor exceptions, but let's just say flat funding. And in the broader context of what I'm hearing, we're hearing things like Scottish Government departments are modelling for a 3% cut across the board. And these sort of challenges have been exacerbated recently with the employer's national insurance contributions, which obviously as an organisation, as an employer, we will be liable to pay. And I was looking at my notes from last year, and I did talk about financial risk, and I think it's worth mentioning again. So we've got this renewal cycle. We're in the cycle. We continue to work very hard on making sure that we always put our best foot forward. So we've, as an example, been showing our impact reports that we've been releasing to show the difference that we're making as an organisation in our community. These impact reports, I hope you've seen them. There's 2 out already. There's a 3rd one coming. We've been getting really good feedback on those, and particularly from Sport Scotland. And this is good motivation for everybody, but something for us all as members to be particularly proud of. The other work that we've been doing is on our strategic plan. And again, we spent a good time period this year refreshing our strategic plan, gathering input. Haven't changed massively in our plan, perhaps just tightened it up all the messaging. And so again, you may well have seen some communications where we're sort of giving early release of our new strategic plan, and that will be formally launched early next year. So with all this work that we're doing, it is fair to say Sport Scotland recognise the positive impact we've been having within our sporting community. But it is a challenging environment. Now, we've put our best foot forward. We've made our case. I think we put forward an incredibly strong case. We got, again, good feedback from Sport Scotland. And frankly, we're now in the waiting game, which is absolutely standard practice for these cycles. And we'll hear in early 2025 how that goes. I guess now would be a good time for me to just say that I truly appreciate the support from Sport Scotland, but I think I would say clearly it is much more than just a financial relationship. It's a proper partnership. And again, if you look at the minutes from last year, you'll notice how, and again this year, Sport Scotland have stepped in and helped support the organisation in tough days. So I'm really thankful, and I think Charlotte from Sport Scotland is on. Charlotte's our partnership manager, is with us this evening. So Charlotte, thanks to Sport Scotland and everyone at the team there. Just talking of funding, I was delighted to see the recent Connected event in Dundee attracted sponsorship from Freedom Boat Clubs in Loch Lomond. I've also been watching with a little bit of envy my colleagues in Northern Ireland, who again have done quite a nice job on sponsorship of events over there in Northern Ireland. It's certainly an area that I know we've talked about in the past, and certainly an area that we would like to see extended if you take the context of which I just talked about with challenges from a funding perspective of Sport Scotland, I can tell you the RYA is frankly not in any better shape overall either. Then these additional funding opportunities are greatly appreciated and something I would like to see. So quite frankly, if you're interested in doing some partnership or commercial sponsorship with RYA Scotland, please reach out. We'd really welcome a chat and see how we can get a mutually beneficial relationship on that. I mentioned our strategy early on. Now's a great moment. I guess one of the key jobs I always think as the chair is for me to recognise the people in our people, places and communities strategy. I'm frankly always blown away by the activity that happens in our sport. And as I said at the Connected conference the weekend there, it's not what we, RYA Scotland, do. It's what you, our members, what our clubs, what our training centres do. It's enormous, it's massive, and it's really, truly appreciated. Particularly on the volunteer side, most sports in Scotland rely on volunteers. They're the core, in our clubs, working tirelessly for their club, their community, their fellow sailors. So huge thanks from me to you, because I'm pretty confident everyone here's in that bracket, for all the work that you do, bringing that sense of joy and support and sense of belonging. So much appreciated. And as I say, all that volunteering over time, you tend to build friendships. I know a lot of my inner friend circle are through these relationships, and these are great ways of meeting people and bonding and having shared experiences. But I think when you've got friends and long friends, unfortunately, sometimes we end up in situations where friends do pass away, and ultimately this leaves a bit of a hole in our lives. I want to take a few minutes to reflect on one of the holes that we have, that we are sadly left with today. The Scottish sailing community as a whole was dealt a significant blow back in December when Matt Tomby, who's a key member of the RYA Scotland team, passed away under circumstances that were very difficult for family and friends. As Matt's is the organisation that Matt worked for, the employer, but also, frankly, key group of friends for Matt within our sport. We've spent a lot of time keeping in contact with his parents and family, and guided by their wishes as we've gone through this processes with them. I mean, our impact is nothing compared to what I can only imagine his, as I say, family and friends went through. From that, we've been working closely with one of the leading mental health organisations in Scotland, the Scottish Action on Mental Health, and that is also to help the staff through that process, but also for staff awareness and staff training. I look forward to being able to celebrate and recognise Matt's enormous contribution to sailing in the coming months. Matt has left a significant legacy behind him with all the work in the junior and youth programmes on his day job, but frankly, if you if you knew Matt, and I had the great joy of knowing Matt, he lived for our sport and was motivated by as much the Fife regattas as one of the times I remember seeing him bouncing up and down the pontoons with joy. So he's excited as big boat Fife regatta racing as he was bringing in a new Oppie sailor and getting them into racing. So we were truly blessed to be part of a sport and community for life as we are, and the time that we've were able to spend with Matt. So, I mean, if you knew Matt, and again, I think a lot of people on the call probably did know Matt, he wouldn't want us to be moping around too much, and he would expect us to get on with the business of AGM. So, as much as it is a tough jump, I am going to move forward. I wanted to also just say that if mental health definitely played a component in this, and mental health may be affecting you right now. So if there's anything I can do, please reach out, or do reach out to someone, have the conversation. I owe that to you, if nothing else. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to hand over to Katie for the Honorary Secretary's report. Katie, over to you.
Brian, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see so many people joining us this evening. As Brian's summarised, we've had another pretty busy year. Lots of work continuing in the background for our board makeup and also volunteer roles. And I'm going to tell you a bit of an update about what's happened on that this evening. And let others who are focused on other areas do those more, I suppose, interesting sometimes to other people reports later on. So towards the end of last year, just looking forward from last year's AGM, we advertised and established appointments processes in line with our constitution for 2 new volunteer directors, one for cruising and general purposes and one for the independent director, and also for committee members for cruising and general purposes committee, participation and development committee, and performance subcommittees as well. So it was a great pleasure to be able to confirm new board appointments at the early part of 2024 for Cruising and General Purposes Director and Independent Director in March. Peter Robinson as Cruising and General Purposes Director, and Hannah Ladd-Jones as the Independent Director. There were other appointments also made, I know, for the subcommittees. They'll be covered later on this evening. The new board appointments have allowed us, with timing of the way that the board appointments lie and started when the new, it's not new anymore, but when at the time the new constitution was in place, meant that a number of board directors would be coming to the end of their terms of appointments at the same time. And what we've managed to do over the last few appointment processes is make appointments, which mean that the appointments and the terms are staggered. And so the likelihood of a number of appointments coming to a natural end at the same time is much, much less. And that should give us much greater continuity and less of a risk of lots of knowledge and experience leaving at the same time when appointments come to an end. So it's quite pleasing to have got into that rhythm, although it does mean that we're in a continuous process of filling vacancies when they come to an end through our processes. Now, separately from that, in the course of last year, we also finalised updated discussions with RYA about our memorandum of understanding with them, about our ways of working with them, and they were put into place. We're pleased to be able to update those and just bring them up to date and look at how they reflected our continuing working arrangements with them. We've also, from a board meeting perspective, had the great pleasure, certainly from my perspective, of being able to hold a number of board meetings in person over the last year, bringing everybody together where and when that's possible. And I think that's something that a lot of us focus on, because we have board members who are all over Scotland. We don't all live in one area, or even indeed the Central Belt. So at the times when it's possible to bring people together, that's a great opportunity just to meet one-to-one and have those chances to be in the room together. We've also been able to do that. For example, most recently we had a board meeting at Helensburgh Sailing Club, which is one of the affiliated clubs, which also gave us an opportunity to meet with other members from that club who could share some of their experiences and just bring us up to date with what's happening there from a board perspective, as well as the wider work that's done throughout the year by all of our hardworking staff. Two great conferences this year. The first one in Perth, the Connected Conference in March, and also, as Brian's mentioned, more recently, Connected Scotland Gathering in Dundee just last weekend, present great opportunities to bring everyone together, volunteers, affiliated clubs, members, training centres, discuss mutual opportunities, discuss the challenges, and there are a number of those, I think, and certainly a number of heads are better than a few in working through these. So they've been really great events. It's been great to meet people and see them there and be able to take those conversations forward. As Brian's mentioned as well, I just wanted to touch on, obviously there's been a process for the revised strategy this year, running from April 2024, number of meetings and quite a focus certainly for the staff and the board to update that and, just as Brian said, tweak that and make it fit for purpose for presentation for our next 4 years funding cycle. And I know there's going to be more about that to follow tonight, so I'm not going to say more about that, but that's been a very important part of the work that's been done this year. Finally, just as Brian has also acknowledged, we are very, very reliant as an organisation on some 12,500 volunteers from our members in our clubs, working together with those who are in our training centres and the wider communities to help the organisation promote and facilitate the development and promotion of our sport. And really, this is just to acknowledge everyone's contribution, say thanks as well from this perspective, and also to acknowledge the great input and hard work of all the staff who seem to be able to achieve much more than their number of heads suggest. And I think that's great credit to them, but also to all the volunteers who work regularly to turn out at events that are being run. So thanks again, and just marking that again for this evening. And that concludes my report, Brian. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Katie. So we'll move on to the Honorary Treasurer's Report and Table of Accounts with Adam. Adam?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Yeah, Adam Durnley here, so Honorary Treasurer. I think just to kind of start talking a little bit about why we kind of have comfort in our accounts and how they're sort of produced. So the management team work with a external bookkeeping firm to obviously kind of process our financial transactions and to prepare the accounts. The accounts are then reviewed by independent accounting firm and then sort of signed off by the board before being then published on Companies House. And you know, kind of pleasingly this year we had a balanced position, a very small surplus, just over £400, compared to the previous year where we actually had a loss in the accounts. Now we talked about that at the last AGM a little bit. That was down to a one-off event in the some changes in sort of the structure of the organisation. So when we said we were confident that those costs were a one-off and wouldn't see an impact in this year, so please see that's happened. Income's up a little bit. This really reflects increased programme activity. So participation fees are related to the programme activity. Costs pretty stable. We see the costs from that one-off event we talked about last year offset by slightly higher program costs this year, and the team getting out and around Scotland, slightly kind of higher travel costs. So, the core P&L there netting out, as I say, to that very small surplus. On the sort of the balance sheet side, I guess the kind of movement there within fixed assets. So fixed assets lower than last year. Two factors in there. There's another year's worth of depreciation that rolls through, but also we have the sale of a rib during the year. The rib, the price we achieved for it was broadly in line with the book value, the asset value in the accounts. So no sort of real impact in year in accounting terms within the P&L. So overall, reserves may remain kind of healthy. So 226 Ks worth of reserves. So that's sort of money in the bank for a rainy day, and that's kind of in line with our reserves policy. So a sort of overall kind of healthy position there. And then next slide, Finlo, if that's okay. And then just looking at then, Brian alluded to this a little bit earlier, the proportion of our income, where it comes from, and then the kind of high level activities that we spend that income on. I mean, the income's sort of broadly stable, largest proportion there coming from Sport Scotland. We see a slight increase compared to last year in income that we generated ourselves. So that was down at about sort of 7-8% last year, up to 10% this year. A little bit change in the cost base. Last year we had, with a number of changes going on, some subcontractors working within the organisation. They've now been replaced by sort of full-time permanent members of staff. So staff cost is up a little bit back to the sort of historic levels that we've seen in the past. And yeah, you can see on the slide there, the majority of the money getting spent within participation development and the performance areas, which really link to those kind of program activities. So I think overall, a reasonably stable year, kind of at a total level for the organisation, and it remains in a relatively healthy position. But as Brian has talked about, there is the potential of kind of stormy water ahead. But we'll navigate that, and we get a bit more information in the new year. So I think that's it for me.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much. I don't think you mentioned, but it's not a requirement for the annual general meeting to approve the accounts. That's actually a function undertaken by the board. So we can move on. I think we're on to back to Katie, just continuation of office bearers. Katie, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Yes, just item 7 on the agenda. Again, these are items 7 and 8, which follow our items for noting, because the appointment and continuation of appointment of office bearers is a matter, again, for the board that happens as part of our process throughout the year. So as I said, before, we have had some board appointments in the course of this year, but also we have also had reappointments for second term. Pleased to say, of our Vice Chair, Hannah Earl-Payne. Her second term has been extended then until October 2027, when it will expire, and also of Adam Darnley, our Honorary Treasurer, whose term for second term has been extended until July 2027. I mentioned our new appointments previously, so Independent Director Hannah Ladd-Jones and Director for Cruising and General Purposes Peter Robinson, both appointed 17th of March 2024. So those were the continuations and new appointments this year. This next slide, again for noting, gives you a list of all of the current board members of RYA Scotland and when their current terms will expire. Those with stars are second terms and will be coming to an end, and unless, I think, in exceptional circumstances, which apply in some cases for the chair and obviously for the chief executive officer as well, 2 terms are the maximum terms that can be in terms of appointment, unless there are other circumstances. So just asking again that the meeting note all of those continuing appointments. And I see from the questions or chat, there's a question about when the next board vacancies will happen. Well, there is one current vacancy for a youth under 25 director, and we will be advertising that through our usual open appointments process for applications to come in. And then I think otherwise, looking at the appointments which are there, there will be some vacancies coming up in 2026 from January onwards, and any vacancies which come either at the end of the terms or arise before then, obviously we would advertise for and invite people to apply for in the usual way if they arise in the meantime. So I hope that that is helpful. And I think that's all from me on those slides. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Katie. So, well, actually, Adam alluded to this earlier on. We obviously have help from our bookkeepers to produce our accounts, but those are reviewed independently. Those of you familiar with is it Gaekins, I think, if my memory serves me, they've undergone a name change. So I think it's only fair to say that while it's a different name, it is the same independent examiners really under the hood, but are still required by our articles to just get confirmation of this reappointment. So if I could ask for someone to propose the reappointment of MHA as our independent examiners, and somebody to second, again, if you could come off mute and do that, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Brian, Duncan Heppel here. I'm happy to propose.
Great, thank you, Duncan. So Duncan Heppel will propose, and somebody to second that, please.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. That's Charlie Bird.
Charlie, thanks again, much appreciated. So that's MHA appointed as our independent examiners. So that rolls up the formal annual general meeting piece. We're going to go through board and staff updates. I think, frankly, this is the bit I look forward to, and not least because I'm not speaking, but it's just to get a review of all the phenomenal activity. So I'm going to start by handing off to the Vice Chair. So Hannah, over to you.
Ryan, I don't think she's on the call. I've been trying to get in contact with her, but...
Okay, I'm going to move on. We'll see if we can check in with her. So then I'll be handing off to Ben. I'm pretty sure Ben's there. I saw him finishing his dinner earlier on. Ben, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Good evening, everybody. You'll be pleased to hear I've finished my dinner now, Brian. Good evening, everybody. So I'm Ben Kemp, board member, is specifically responsible for governance and equality, diversity and inclusion. This time last year, I said something about some of the governance changes we had been making. This year, relatively little to say about governance, which I think is a good thing so far as governance is concerned, because a lot of the changes that we put in place are becoming embedded. But I did want to talk a bit about a really important topic of EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, which does link to governance and the way we organize ourselves and go about making sure that our community, our boating community, is an inclusive one in which everybody can feel they belong. And this is, as we say in the strategy, something that one has never completed. We have to keep going at, and we take very seriously. And we're going to be taking very seriously in the next period, as you will see from our forthcoming strategy. Up until now, we've focused our efforts in this area really around three particular areas, and you can read about some of the activities that we've undertaken in promoting boating to those who are differently abled, the sailability training that we've delivered for an increasing number of coaches, instructors, and volunteers to make boating available to people who are differently abled, and we've held a number of events to promote our work in this area and to include people with different forms of disability. The second area we focused on is very much around encouraging younger people, a younger demographic, to get involved in boating with some success. Again, with a number of initiatives in this area, and actually on our board and in our governance structure, increasing representation of younger people, including amongst our board membership, as you'll have seen from the previous slides. And then the third area is really around promoting involvement of women. It's gender diversity in boating, and again some significant progress, albeit long way to go. And there's some statistics here just reflecting some of the numbers in different parts of our community, including within RYA Scotland and our membership, where the percentage in brackets is the percentage of women, female participants or members of each of those groups. So you can see that within RYA Scotland itself, 50% female now, which looking pretty positive. There'll be nuances within that, of course, as there will be in all of these statistics. But you get a snapshot from this. If you look at the RYA member figure at the bottom, as is 6,020, still only 20% female. So we've got some way to go, and you can see the different breakdowns there. In general, the trajectory is progressive, but we recognise there's considerable work to be done. And if you go to the next slide, please, Finla, thank you. And this is it's been a really important part of our strategy up to now. You can see some of the progress we've made in more detail from our impact report on our current strategy, and you'll read about what we're proposing for the next period in our new strategy. The aim going forward is to build on the range of activities we've undertaken in each of these areas, to have a probably slightly more structured and strategic approach, in some ways a more data-driven approach. And one of the things that we're really focused on is improving the depth and breadth of data that we have available to us, so that we can understand our membership, understand our community better, and thereby look to improve the diversity of our membership, and to know to what extent we're succeeding. We're establishing within our governance structure an advisory group that won't be focused on a particular area of RYA Scotland's activity, but will cut across everything we do, to be able to input appropriately and advise on EDI matters across the organisation and its range of activities. And I've noted here a particular and increased focus on socio-economic inclusion, to try to promote the accessibility of boating in all its forms to people from a range of socio-economic backgrounds, and challenging sometimes what may be the perception that it isn't as inclusive as it really should be. and ultimately to foster a boating community in Scotland which is open and inclusive, where everybody's welcome and feels a sense of belonging. That's the aim. We're very serious about that, and we really welcome your support, your ideas, your initiatives to help us achieve that. That's it from me, Brian. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ben, for that. I'm going to hand quickly to Peter Robinson, Cruising and General Purposes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Ben. So good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm Peter Robinson, and have an oversight and responsibility for our Cruising and General Purposes. I think just to reflect on 7-8 months of coming and joining a very passionate and committed group of people at all levels in terms of what we're doing, very much focused on safe, sustainable and inclusive access to water. I look at the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. I'd like to say very much thank you to Charlie, who chairs up that group and coordinates a lot of activity that takes place, and also to Graham Russell, who's here, who I kind of try to refer, or I think of us as the elegant swan swimming across the water, and with Charlie and Graham being the two swans' legs paddling away hard underneath. They do an awful lot of work for all of us on behalf of RYA Scotland. So thank you to you. Finlay, if you move it along, just a little bit of detail and to put a little bit of narrative as to what is going on, and a reflection from me. When I came and joined RYA Scotland, I did not appreciate what we do on behalf of our community. It's only when you start looking and understanding it you appreciate it. There is a huge amount of effort and work going on, looking consultations and engagement, informing and trying to, I suppose, enforce a few things on behalf of our community and what we're trying to do, both at a national and local level. There's the group of coast watchers who are out and about, ear on the ground and eyes wide open, and feeding information back to the group, so that we can understand and manage some of the processes that are going on there. The committee is very much focused around inland waterways. We've had some good meetings with Scottish Canals in particular, looking at some of the challenges that they face, and we need to, I think, work closely with them, support them through some of their challenges, and provide again that evidence as to why that inclusive and safe access to water is really important. Lots of work, a huge amount of work going on with harbour revision orders, and the final thing I just want to touch upon is really bring the elephant out of the room so that we can deal with it and just make sure that we don't end up with a plethora of questions later on. So I'm sure many people are aware of the Peel Ports and Clyde Ports proposals that have, I think, manifested themselves into the community over the last couple of months. We are working very hard. There is a working group established. Finlay is working very closely with a number of us to understand the position, to inform it, to fight against it if we think it is unfair, and to reach a pragmatic and constructive position on behalf of the community and the environment. So there is a lot of things that need to be done under that sustainability aspect. So on that, Brian, I will let you pass over to Neil.
Yep, great, thanks. It is a very hot topic of a moment. I appreciate all the work that's going in from the group there. Neil, over to you.
Yeah, good to go. Peter, thank you, and to the team who support you in making sure we preserve the right and the freedoms to access the waters of Scotland. The real aim is to make sure we've got as many people on those waters as possible. So if you could flick on to the next one, please. I'm pleased that the team is basically stable since last year, although we will be losing Nassif, our admin support, later on this year, who's been invaluable in just keeping the support to everybody and to the participation and development committees. Big thing is to make sure we get access to people, and there's some highlights there from the year: increasing onboard sailability, and there's a very small fund which is available, and we would ask that if you feel that your club could benefit from that, please get in touch with us. And I suggest if we go to the next slide, we can look in a bit more detail as to exactly what that means. So the Participation and Development Committee has been reorganised and re-energised, and there's a number of new people joining it. And we've also focused on some pretty key areas. So how do people come into the sport? How do we retain them within the sport? How do we make sure, how do we understand who's actively participating in the sport through and getting some more data around that? Sailing when you're not fully able-bodied, as Ben has pointed out, is something which could be everything from just having an impediment of a leg or an arm to something much more serious. And it's great to see the volunteers who I've named on this, and really would like to take the opportunity to thank them for giving up their time and putting energy into the support to help develop it. And obviously ably supported. Each one of the groups has got one of our full-time team who are taking it on board. And the real aim is to make sure we get the feedback from the community, which includes yourselves. So please make sure you do understand who your regional development officer is. And on behalf of your clubs and as individuals, give us the feedback, because we work for you. And as Adam pointed out, 25% of our spend goes to participation and development. And we have to use that in a way that is leveraging the assets of the sport, getting as many people in and making it as vibrant and energetic as possible. Part of that is the red number, the red there, where we're increasing more onboard clubs and indeed more sailability. And the idea there is also to make sure those are spread north, south, east, west, and inland, so that we give people good access and good ability to engage with the sport and hopefully start a long journey enjoying the whole sport of sailing and boating in many, many ways that can be done. As we say, there is we have also supported some of the clubs who have looked for infrastructure funding, although again, we kind of join the dots rather than do some of the hard work, and where we can help celebrate successes and just bring some positive energy to the whole sport. So if there are questions, very happy to take them later on. And you've got my details, and through the RDOs, please give us a feedback so we are doing what you believe is necessary to help sustain and grow the sport in all of its myriad of different ways. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Neil, for that update, and thanks to the team. Hi, everyone. My name's Jordan McNeilage. Here to give a little update on the youth development side of things, and what the team and everybody's been up to over the last year. And I'm pleased to say that it's a lot. So if you bear with me just a moment, I'll happily take you through everything that has been and what we're hoping is to come. So at the beginning of the year, we started off with our first connected call, getting discussions going around what the year was going to look like. And then we had our podcast take on the voices of student sailing to hear what they had to say about the student sailing scene. And then we had a development weekend of our young coaches at Blair Badich, which was well attended, and good to see some of the younger coaches in the program getting together. March, we had our Scottish Student Sailing Keelboat Championships, which was well attended, and our first connected conference of the year, where we introduced our youth sailors chat room, which was a good vehicle for us to get some of the input from the young people that participate in our sport, get some of their ideas and start listening to what they have to say, more importantly. On from that, we had April filled with lots of onboard sessions, and May with an OYT experience for Finlow to see what the OYT is all about and the difference that they make, getting young people involved in sailing and the difference that sailing can make to young people's lives. And then we had a very, very well attended youth and juniors, and a big thank you to the team that took the time and the care to put such a fantastic event together at Loch Tummel. It was great to be a part of that and see that all unfold. We had the big event of the Clipper Around the World race at Oban in July, and we had another series of sessions where young people could come and give us their opinions, and we could listen to some of their stories and take on what they had to say. And then we held another Youth Voices online session in October, where we could take a bit more of that information on. So this year has been a big information gathering exercise for us to kind of take a temperature and see where we are with our young people and what they've got to say. And that culminated in our Connected conference in Dundee in November, where we had another session just to get the last little bits out of our young people. Pleased to say that we've had an increase in onboard centres, and with that, we've had an increase in some youth activity. We've had such events such as Giants Academy, Scottish Fin and Foil events all around the country that have been well attended this year. So really, really positive things to look forward to. From there, looking forward to next year, we're focusing on establishing a group, working group for young people and young voices so that they can have impact on decision making at this level, and kind of where some of that support, as Neil alluded to earlier on, where some of that support goes for participation and development for our young people, as well as kind of building on the successes of some of the events that we've had on for this year. And as has already been mentioned, we've got the vacancy up for our under 25 director. So if anybody happens to know of anybody that would be interested, that vacancy will be coming online in the near future. That's everything I've got. Next up is Jack.
Good evening all. My name is Jack Mitchell, the Coaching and Training Director and Board Member. I think I know a good portion of you on the call, but if I haven't met you, welcome. It's safe to say that this year for the coaching and training side has been a fantastic year. And if we could flick to the next slide, Pauline, thank you. And the top line on the top sentence on the left-hand side of the screen really sums up for me what has been achieved. But there are really two messages that I want you to leave with here today. And the first is that we have invested in more people across Scotland than ever before. And the second is we're really starting to see the fruit on the trees, where the hard work over the last number of years is leading to a place now where the successes are coming quite fast. And I'm going to get into a little bit of that just in a minute, but I'd like to just share with you the success of the new coaching collective, we're calling it, which is the coaching committee, has now been set up since the previous AGM and is very much in place, delivering impact straight away with administrating some of the subsidy funding for our instructors and instructor courses and everything, which is a huge step forward and great support for the community. The coaching team stays the same, led by Robin Nichol and hugely supported with Robin Phillips, and not forgetting the wider team that they have of volunteer coach trainers, tutors, and their support networks that go with it. The successes really can be summed up in a few ways. And the coach education team have invested or been enabling the investment through financial means, through taking away some of the financial barriers, again mentioned through the coaching collective subsidy. And that's proved a huge help in not only driving the number of people up through the instructor pathways, but also recognizing other financial ways that the team can take away that barrier. The next area is investing in greater opportunity for all. And this isn't just getting more people onto courses, but it's really understanding the geographical locational challenges that our sector faces and tailoring that support and their requirements to those areas. And again, that's been a build-up of number of years, but this year has seen a absolutely huge success. They've invested in the pathway, or certainly the development of the pathway, and looking at, again, understanding the challenges that the sector faces in Scotland and the levers that we, as RYA Scotland and the community can pull, developing key specific support, or whether it's training, whether it is leading courses that enable better success through those instructor, coaching, tutor, trainer pathways. And again, some huge successes being the CPD program, the Aspire Trainer program. It's great to report this year that we've had an increase in trainers, which from a trainer pool, having more people coming through the bottom end and exciting trainers on the ground, it is only a benefit for us long term. The team have been able to invest in the community, and that connectivity piece of our trainers and tutors. They are fundamentally the team on the ground delivering and enabling, inspiring the next generation. But more than that, they are the team that are feeding back, and they've been a huge part in how the operational team have delivered their successes and their work this year, because it's been really important that we've been driven by the challenges on the ground and the data to tell us that they're important challenges, and that coaching trainer community has been really significant in that. And finally, as you'd expect, this isn't a one-off, or this isn't a short-term plan. The operations team have invested heavily in ensuring that whatever we do is a building blocks in the strategy, and it's a very exciting time moving into the next strategy, that their hard work is only going to be foreseen as it goes through. With the Aspire program that has been a success in the trainer world, being developed for the lower end practitioners, pulling through a greater quality and greater connected team right the way through, from the very entry level instructor all the way up to the trainer community, and making those connections. And finally, the connecting into the that strategy is really the work that the operation team are doing with the wider stakeholders, the tailored support with the RTGs, and our colleagues in the home countries and in England, to make the success and the objectives, what we do in Scotland, wide known and connected, to ensure that the support can be long term. And I think that is a huge praise to the operations team for putting that together. So I'll come back to finish off. The two key messages I'd like to leave here today is that we have invested in more people in Scotland than ever before. And really what we're doing now is just building on the success to a greater strategy moving into 2025. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Moving on to Hamish. Over to you, Hamish.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Jack. So no apologies for this picture. We showed something similar last year, but that was pre-Olympics. This is post-Olympics. So I'm sure everybody on the call knows that Anna Burnett, Scottish clearly, and Finsterra, also Scottish, represented the UK at the Paris Olympics. Fourth for Anna. Those that watched the medal race, I'm sure, had the same anguish that they went through. And Finn, seventh for him, his first Olympics, and his second. So great performance, and both products of our system, and we're very proud that Scotland can still produce athletes that can achieve the greatness of going to the Olympic Games. So that moves me on. I wanted to talk a little bit about people within the performance program itself, particularly and firstly staff. We have had a change of people through the course of the last 12 months. Some of that is driven by the events that Brian alluded to earlier. But we have Jamie Rogers now in position as pathway manager. That was what we previously called the performance manager. I'll talk about the rebranding in a second, but Jamie graduated through interview in the middle of the year, and we appointed him into that role, which I think is a great appointment. We've also been able to backfill his position with Ben Luckett, who's joined us in June as well. Another really strong appointment for us, actually. He's joined as what we now call the Pathway Development Officer. Really strong team, full head count, and they both work really closely with the performance committee, which is really good to see. And they've been looking to see already what improvements we can make to the program, what we can do for our sailor experience, for our coach experience. and really just ensure that they're joined together, really importantly, with what's going on with participation. Because if we don't have that link, then we cannot get the filter through of young sailors. And there's some really good work going on there already. They've also had an eye on the RYA pathway review, which some of you may have heard about. You'll see where the branding is coming from in terms of what we're calling these different roles now. But the pathway review has been conducted by Hamble to really look at the changing Olympic demands, see what costs can be reduced in our sport where possible, and broaden the demographics of the talent pathway. We've yet to see what that's going to really mean for us, but they've certainly seen that they need to improve the affordability and the accessibility of youth performance with increased engagement. So how that's going to filter through to RYA Scotland, we don't know yet, but there'll be more on that to come over the beginning of the next calendar year. And I know that both Jamie and Ben are in regular dialogue with Hamble as to see what that actually means for our system. We do run a small number of events over the course of the year. We've run the Winter Championships in Largs. We've run the Youth and Juniors that was mentioned earlier and the Giant Academy. All have been received really, really well. Numbers have gone up, which is great. So we run these in-house with the help of the club that we're running them from. We have provided coach support to the Eric Twinanes, the Youth Nationals. I should say that Dan finished third in the IQ foil, which is another great score. And we provided a team to the Celtic Cup with coach support as well. We have done the selection for what we're calling the Scottish Sailing Team, rebranding there again, but that really covers both the academy in particular and what was the performance team. So we've seen an increase in applicants, which is good because we needed it. And we'll be delivering 7 classes across 7 clubs for the academies. And we are going to be using Blair Varick predominantly until we find something that may suit our needs better for the performance team. We do support a number of other events through the course of the years, the Toppers, the Ilkas, the Oppies, through the coach program that we've got. And I should also call out a new pairing that we've got with Andrew Perrott and Rue Purvis, who have just been selected for the British Youth Sailing Team in the 29er class. So really, really strong pairing there, and really hope that will allow others to aspire to join that elite group. And we did have some standout results. Andy Brown was second overall in the IQ foil Europeans, and Isla Watson was 10th. So strong results from them. But we need more sailors. I said it last year, I'll say it again. We still need more people into our system. We are looking to alter the system and amend it and make it as fit for purpose as we possibly can. But I would ask everybody on the call to really keep a lookout in your clubs and identify as early on as we can, talented, motivated sailors who can join the pathway. And I said it last year, I'll say it again, and I hope to say it again as the years go on, that can become another Anna or another Finn. Thank you.
Thanks, Hamish. Stu.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for having me back. I'm Stuart Ainsley. I'm your communications marketing non-exec. I'm just going to go with 3 headlines from me, which will be about the communications team, our impact awards, and the impact report number 2, which was 2023 into 2024. All of our staff and volunteers are communicators. So the RYA Scotland's external communications reflect everything we all do. When I talk about RYA Scotland staff on the comms team, I mean whose primary function is communications and marketing. Last year, I began by talking about staff turnover. Mark Turner having run a department of 1 for the previous year, and I'm going to start with staff again today. Philippa Howie joined us in November 2023, which means that this week she has been with us for a year, briefly bringing us back to a full complement. But Mark, our communications and internal engagement manager, who joined in 2016, has left the organisation in June for a new opportunity. Philippa's been a great hire. She brings new skills, ways of thinking, bags of enthusiasm. And Mark, also enthusiastic, was the creator of our Impact Awards, which I reported on last year. Not for the first time, maybe for the first time. I'm pleased to say that RYA Scotland recognised Mark with an Impact Award at the end of August after he'd left the organisation. And speaking of impact, we've recognised 8 people with awards since this time last year. The most important stories are recognising the amazing efforts within our shared sports, and more are still being announced. So keep an eye out on social media, the Facebook pages, website, all the rest of that. I think also some of those people have been slipped into newspapers. I hope Philip is nodding. So keep your eyes. You'll see some of those heroes in our sport still being drip fed throughout the rest of the year. We also published our second impact report last year, which was a continuation of our previous strategy. The report is a collection of highlights. It's a good indication of where we're going, what we're doing as an organization. It is important to us because it shows where positive change happens through people, places, and communities. It also informs our next steps, and those next steps culminate in our revised strategy. I'm sure Finla will talk to that. A comment I've heard more than once is valid and it's important. In those impact reports, we must also recognize today's challenges. So an aspiration of mine is that along with all the amazing stuff that's going on in our sport, we prove that we are listening and that we understand what's going on and communicate that just a tiny bit more clearly in future. Which brings me on to a final point, which is a confession from me, which is a year ago, I sat on this call and alluded to a shortly upcoming communications survey. Sounds small fry, but I'm a bit disappointed in myself that I failed to deliver it. Personal challenge for me, listen more to the challenges surrounding our sport, and that means hearing more from you. But in the meantime, if you have got any questions, concerns, or requests about how we communicate and what you'd like to hear, get us told. We have established a communications at email address. That's communications at the web URL, which has already received a handful of messages over the past couple of weeks. We have read and, where required, replied to them all. So don't be afraid to stay quiet. If you've got something you would like to tell us or you particularly need to hear from us, drop us a line. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Stu. So I am going to upset the slide presenter by just jumping the order. I alluded to Hannah earlier on. We have managed to get in contact again with Hannah, some technology challenges. But Hannah, can I hand over to you and we'll get your report, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So apologies. It's not just technology, but unfortunately, I've got a little girl who's not feeling very well, and only mummy will do tonight. So a few tantrums, but hopefully all good. So delighted to be able to give you a little bit of an update. First thing that I really want to do is acknowledge the stability that we're now seeing within the team. There's been quite a period of challenges and change, and it's fantastic to see things settling down. And this has really created a collaborative and supportive atmosphere that's really helped the organisation move forward. The stability has allowed us to focus on what matters most, which is supporting our sailing and boating community and making meaningful progress on our goals. Our people, places and communities strategy has been at the heart of this progress. And in terms of people, we've put a lot of effort into training and developing our volunteers, instructors, club leaders and staff. By investing in people, we're building these skills and confidence across Scotland's clubs, empowering individuals to grow and contribute to their boating communities. We've also seen significant progress in places. Our regional development officers have been fantastic in working closely with clubs to support events and promote programmes like Onboard. A highlight this year was the Round the World Clipper race visiting Oban, which is home for me, a first for Scotland. And it was a really wonderful showcase for our clubs and the wider boating community. And I really hope that we can keep building on this momentum by helping clubs across the country, across the country, develop and strengthen their activities. I've recently also taken on the role as principal of Oban Sailing Club, and this has given me a bit of a new perspective on the communities aspect of our strategy. So RYA Scotland support at club level is making a huge difference, but I've also seen some challenges faced by our commercial centres, especially with rising costs, and many are exploring alternatives and moving away from RYA training. And I think this is an area where RYA Scotland could look at offering more tailored support to help these centres stay resilient and connected within our network. Finally, last weekend's Connected conference in Dundee was a fantastic example of our strategy in action, bringing together representatives from clubs and centres to share successes, ideas and challenges. Events like this are invaluable for building connections, learning from each other and strengthening our community spirit. Looking ahead, I'm going to be focusing on supporting Finlo and the team with the safety management developments, whilst also representing the needs of training centres on the board. And through our people, places and communities together on water strategy, then I'm confident we're setting up a bright future for boating in Scotland. Many thanks.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Appreciate you getting along. So we should be on to Finlo, who is our last speaker. Finlo,
Yep.
over to you. The best.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks very much. So, as ever, being the last speaker, everyone set me up. Finlo's going to talk about this. Finlo's going to talk about this. Finlo's going to talk about this, and then I'm given 2 minutes. So we'll see how we go. But it's great. Just like last year, absolutely taken aback by how much positive activity is going on in the Scottish boating community. It's just a joy to see what happens. But off the back of this series of updates, I think it's probably an appropriate time for me to thank the members of the board actually for their extraordinary efforts they put into supporting the work of the staff. So from the staff, from me, thank you to the board members, deeply appreciated. And whilst it's helpful probably to just reflect a little bit on what we've achieved, we also need to plan forwards. So what I want to say is a little bit about our future direction. So we understood that people, place and communities was working quite well. We're getting good positive response from the community about that. So no major course changes planned with our strategy. Rather, we've gone for a refresh of the strategy. So it's more succinct, it's clearer, it's more relevant to what's important now. And this new refreshed strategy will come into effect in spring 2025. And you may have noticed, hopefully, that we've put a link to the new strategy in your AGM welcome email. So please do follow that link. Please take a look. Tell us what you think with the new communications at web email address. So the new strategy does set out our desire to develop the right opportunities with the appropriate support in the right places to deliver positive outcomes. And just taking, for example, our new vision, we want people to be inspired. Like Hannah, I also live in Oban. It's a sort of hotbed of around the world fleet and harbour revision orders. But this summer we did host the Clip Around the World fleet. Huge numbers of people saw those boats. Probably thousands saw those boats, heard the stories, heard the great stories from the sailors, and were potentially inspired to go sailing. But what could we do with that? How do we actually convert that inspiration to opportunity? Those first-time accessible opportunities are really so important to be able to signpost where those are. That goes back to some of what Neil was talking about as well. But we must make sure we continue to inspire people, including those from outside our sport. So this is where I'd like to acknowledge the role of one of our newest board members, Hannah Ladd-Jones, who brings that external perspective to our work. Hannah doesn't come from a deeply embedded sailing background, actually comes from mountaineering, but is able to show us perhaps what RYA Scotland is missing and how we promote our sport to new audiences.
Take the route and jump.
Okay.
So as well as the 3 themes of people, place and communities, we've also got 4 strategic foundations: communications, we've heard about EDI, we've heard about partnerships, Brian and others have alluded to that, and sustainability. So in terms of sustainability, we absolutely recognise there's 2 sides to that particular coin: what we are doing as an organisation and how we can inform and influence others. And the picture here is of Mary Todd, the Minister for Social Care, Mental Wellbeing and Sport, and she was visiting the 4th Corinthian Yacht Club during Climate Week and meeting club members, some of the RYA staff and RYA Scotland volunteers. And she was wanting to understand the climate impacts on sport and the actions that we can take. And actually, Sport Scotland was requested to host this event by Sport Scotland, and it's a recognition really from one of our major funders of our established track record in supporting sustainable practices through the Green Blue initiative. So it was a real honour to sort of take up that request from Sport Scotland to host Mary Todd on a visit during Climate Week. I'll just close by sharing some important numbers with you. Some of these you may be familiar with, other numbers may surprise you. We've got a staff team of 15, and again, this is the right opportunity for me to acknowledge their energy, their commitments, and certainly their resilience that they've shown over the last year. But we're supported by, at the moment, 54 volunteer board and committee members. And then there's probably the same again who support us directly in other volunteer roles. We have a number there of volunteers, 12,500 in the community. And like many organisations, we recognise that volunteer capacity is potentially the most vulnerable point of failure for what we do, I would say. So collectively, everyone on this call, everyone in our communities need to value and support volunteers, not just in the sailing community, but any community activities. So thank you to those who are volunteering, and please do support them. The biggest number on this figure is 19,500 club members, but there's an even bigger number that's not on this graphic, and that's the total number of people who participate in some form of sailing, boating or water sport in Scotland. Question is, how big is that number? I don't know for certain. Some sources estimate it to be in excess of 300,000 who are involved in sailing, boating or water sport in Scotland. So as an organisation, as RYA Scotland, do we care about those participants who don't feature on this graphic? They're not members of a club. They're not members of RYA. Do we care about them? We absolutely do. We need to make sure that what we're delivering through our refresh strategy, either delivering it as a staff member or delivering it as a volunteer, but to make sure there's sort of very clear threads of relevance for everyone that's involved in the sport, and that it inspires those who are yet to be part of this community. It reminds me of an advert for Jameson whiskey back in the 1990s, which is there's no such things as strangers, just friends you haven't met yet. So I kind of feel it's the same sentiment just there. So I'll just conclude. Thank you for your support during the year. Thank you for your attendance tonight. And we're a very open organisation. One of our new values, openness. So do get in contact. Many of you do, with things that you're excited by, things that concern you, things you'd like us to take a look at. Thank you very much. Back to you, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Finlo, and thanks to all the speakers. We did a good old canter through all the corners of the organisation. The phrase that's been used for a long time is that broad church. We do cover a lot of areas. So I'm going to move into AOCB. We asked, along with the invite, if people wanted to submit questions to us, and delighted to say that Martin Latimer and Shedden have submitted a question each. So we'll take those two questions, and then I will open it up to the floor if anyone wants to ask any more, particularly based on what you've just been presented or things we've talked about as we've gone through. But I'll take Martin's question first. I'm pretty sure I saw Martin's name on the list somewhere. So Martin's question is, there has been a discussion around RYA Scotland relocating their office, and there appears to be some logic to this. It is an ideal opportunity for RYA Scotland to embed themselves more deeply in the marine leisure community. Can I ask if a decision has been made or what options are being considered? And you absolutely can ask Martin, and I'll hand over to Finlo, who's going to give you an answer.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and thanks, Martin, for the question. So the background to this is Sport Scotland selling Caledonia House at South Gyle. They have sold it now. It will close its doors to sport in the middle of December. So the RYA Scotland office has been there for 20 odd years. Our current use of that office in Edinburgh is approximately 1 day a week by a small group. primarily the admin group. We also use it for some storage, and we use it occasionally for meetings, some staff days, some interviews, things like that. I think it's worth bearing in mind the geographic distribution of the staff. About a third live in Edinburgh, or sort of greater Edinburgh area, a third live in the sort of greater Glasgow area, and a third live elsewhere. A few in Aberdeen, me and Oban, Arica, Helensburgh. So we are scattered around. So, and also the activity, what we do is scattered around Scotland as well. We're active all over. So my decision is that no singular location is appropriate for establishing an HQ, for example. What we are looking at is a series of work hubs. So we're looking for a work hub in the Edinburgh area for some face-to-face working by staff groups. We've been using Templeton quite a lot in Glasgow. We've been meeting in sailing clubs. So we've been using the sort of maritime community, the marine infrastructure around the coast to host our meetings as well. So we are looking for a hub in Edinburgh for a co-share. We're not going to take on a whole office, whole location to be in there for one day a week. We put a message out on social media looking for some ideas. We've followed some of those leads, and we're looking at the moment to co-locate with another sport in the Edinburgh area, and that will provide a hub in the east. We often use Aberdeen Sports Village up in the north. As I say, we've used Templeton, but that's where we're going at the moment. Sort of hubs to be able to work face to face rather than a singular location, which is exclusively RYA Scotland. Added on to that, we also are appreciative of the sort of logistics hub that we have with Sailing Fast just outside Falkirk. So that's another part of the puzzle. So we're a very distributed staff group with very distributed activity. And at the moment, the plan is to have a distributed office hub arrangement around Scotland.
Okay. Martin, any comeback on that?
Hold on. Right, that's me unmuted. Yeah. So Hamish will know what I've been digging at here, but given that I wrote a report some while ago for RYA, and that 42% of cruising and racing yachts are on the Clyde, 35% are also on the West Coast. That's 77% of cruising and racing boats, keelboats, are on the West Coast of Scotland. A lot of the dinghy activity centres around the Clyde, and we have Inverclyde Sports Centre at Largs. And yet when you mention your hub activities, there's no mention of anything based either around Largs, 770 berths, or on the Clyde, or recognising that huge concentration of boats on the West Coast.
Well, you're a braver man than me, Martin, to say that dinghy sailing only happens on the West Coast, because there's quite a few people, I imagine.
No, I didn't say dinghy sailing, because dinghy sailing happens all over Scotland. So
you implied the majority. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The other point I would make is up until very recently, one of the staff members was in Largs. So Mark, he lived in Largs and actually did a bit of co-locating at Largs Yacht Haven. At the end of the day, what I have talked about, where we were originally, and I think your point's well made. This is not RYA Central Belt, as I like to talk about for quite a few years. This is RYA Scotland, and I've been keen that we reflect the whole of Scotland. And I'm comfortable with the geographical dispersal of staff and the input that gives us and the insight that gives us. And I think, with respect, we are well connected to what's going on, and we continue to look at other options. Hamish made point earlier on about, particularly around about performance sailing. So it's always an involving story, but I think we are comfortable with our representation. But I appreciate the question for sure, and that challenge is valid. We need to represent everybody, though. I think that's the key point I would make. Okay. I'm going to move on. Anne Shedden. Anne's question is, with the new government at Westminster and changes in focus for policy and funding, what might the impacts be for boaters in Scotland, and how will the RYA be involved? And I got this question, Anne, and I did, because we reached out, I questioned just to check RYA or RYA Scotland, because I'm always clear that I don't speak for the RYA, but I do, and all the folks here speak for RYA Scotland, but I do have contacts, so I'll try and give a little bit of context. Obviously, in simple terms, sport is a devolved matter, and I've mentioned in the beginning with my session, I talked about all the work that we do with Sport Scotland, who are effectively charged by the Scottish Government of running sports and supporting national governing bodies. And we have had a very strong relationship with Sport Scotland over the years, and I look forward to that continuing. I don't know, the change I'm looking to see, I kind of indicated it a little bit, is to see what happens on the funding cycle. So obviously, with the recent UK budget, there will be more funding through I think it's the Barnett formula will appear in Scotland. Now, ultimately, it is for Scottish Government to decide how they will spend that money, and clearly I would be delighted if they would spend some of that money on sport and help Sport Scotland, which will ultimately help us. And we continue to work with the Scottish Parliament, with the cross-party working group on marine leisure that we secretary and have regular contributions to, and in fact is the main vehicle by which Peter and the Cruising General Purposes team are coordinating response to the Peel Ports challenge that we're having. The RYA, frankly, I haven't got an insight yet. Now, that's mainly because I haven't had an opportunity to meet with some of the RYA chair late since really Labour's come to power. They may have formed, starting to get forming opinions, but unfortunately, I can't really give you insight. Actually, I'm meeting with the RYA chair next week, so I might actually take your question and use it, if that's okay, and ask him how that impacts the RYA. But I hope that's a little bit of a flavour. I'm not sure it really fully answers your question, but I hope that I've touched on as many points as relevant to certainly RYA Scotland, and I'm happy to hear your feedback on what you think of the response.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, it was just that, one of the overall RYA, and obviously go with RYA Scotland as well, role is to influence the government and policymakers, and obviously we've had quite a change there. And it was just some of the issues that you mentioned, the Peel Ports, but also things like the Millennium Link with its 25 years, but it's going to be closed next year, and how the canals in Scotland are sort of run differently from down south, and just to make sure that's acknowledged and, if you like, represented, how Scotland is slightly different in that. But the other one was the HVO in particular. While it applies to all of the UK, we perhaps have maybe a bit later in Scotland, maybe just a wee bit more difficulty in getting availability of HVO, because that was through the Waterways all-party parliamentary committee at Westminster. I believe we got as far as getting the duty sorted out for rivers, canals, and rivers, canals, and lakes, but not for coastal. And just with the amount of vessels we've got west coast and some in the east, it's quite a big thing. Not just for the environment, from the environment point of view, but in particular for sailing yachts, where that HVO may be getting to the point of being a safety issue as well. when it's got a much longer lifespan than the diesel with the 7% bio added, that you're not using a full tank of diesel perhaps, and it's sitting there longer than the shelf life of diesel now. And that was just a sort of safety issue that I felt needed to be brought up, and making sure that we are driving whoever is looking at Westminster to get some of these things back on the agenda. Because as I've been looking, is when the election's called, the all-party, the cross-party parliamentary groups are all disbanded. And from what I've seen, they haven't come back to, there's nobody working in that issue to get the coastal side of HVO included in the agreements.
Okay. As I said, I've got the opportunity. I'm having the chat with the RYA on I think it's Monday night coming.
Yeah.
You've given me a great topic to talk about. I'm always looking for stuff to talk about with them. So
that would be appreciated. Yeah.
I'll happily raise that. It sounds like an important
Thank
topic.
you.
I must admit, some of the detail behind that I was scraping a little bit, but I was watching Charlie Bird nodding his head at various points there. So clearly, again, maybe Charlie can jump in here, but there are clearly issues that my colleagues are aware of, and will definitely work on driving forward for you.
Because from my point of view, I've been looking to move to HVO for my own boat, but found it very difficult. Most of the bigger suppliers will sell you 200 litres, which, if we're buying individually, it's not really possible. And then, where else do you get it?
Understood. Martin, Charlie, come on, please jump in.
Yeah, just to jump in on that. The Cruising and General Purposes Committee, we're well aware of all those issues, in particular the HVO, and that has come up in the cross-party group at Holyrood as well. We're pushing hard for a greater kind of adoption, manufacture and distribution of HVO. I'd love to fill my tanks with HVO for all sorts of reasons. On the canals issue, we are developing very, very close links with Scottish Canals, where the discussions are, free and frank. And we do that both at the Cruising and General Purposes Committee. We're also forming a working group, subgroup of the Cruising and General Purposes Committee, which it will be in regular contact. I go to a number of the canal users groups meetings, and I'm also having monthly updates over the phone with Scottish Canals. We don't pull our punches when we see there are major issues, but also, I feel very strongly that Scottish Canals are working under very, very difficult circumstances, financial problems. They also suffered badly during the pandemic when they couldn't do things like weed cutting or dredging. So we recognise the issues that they're struggling with as well. And I also feel very strongly that as RYA Scotland, we're also representing, the self-styled ditch crawlers, who use the canals as well as us lumpy water sailors. So, we represent their interests. And also, I also feel very strongly that we represent the interests of our non-members who we want to become members. And the more they understand what we are doing on behalf of, the boating community, we want to draw them in, not only to become members, but to become volunteers as well. So, please feel reassured. All the issues that you've mentioned, they are part of the great, diversity of issues that Peter mentioned at the beginning that we are working and involved in, a lot of it behind the scenes. But yeah, we've you know, we're hopefully we're on the case. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And likewise, as part of the Fourth Yacht Clubs Association, we try and attend those meetings as well. So, you know, together we can keep the pressure up.
Great. Okay, thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
It's a good question, and I'll ask the question. I'll pop you a note if I get any meaningful. I'll pop you a note regardless, so you get some feedback.
Thank you.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. So, folks, I'm going to throw it open. If you want to ask a question, if you can, if you know how to use it, if you use the raise hand functionality in Zoom, it's down the bottom. I believe, if my memory serves, it's if you click the react button, there's a raise hand button there. Stick your hand up. When I see a hand up, I'll come to you and we'll go through the questions. So I see right away I've got Susan's iPhone. Susan, what's your question?
Can you hear me okay? I'm on a slightly wobbly phone. So I have a performance-related question. I suppose my interest is performance-focused because my son is one of the two, the team, the 29er, who's got into the British youth squad. And my question is about the support that's available for them to fully participate equally with the other sailors. It is quite an onerous expectation on them and parents to be able to share equally, and the expectation is pretty high. So what can the RYA in Scotland do to help them, please?
Sure. I am going to look and see, I don't know, Jamie or Hamish can maybe pick that one up.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Susan. I'll let Jamie take it. No, it's a fair question, actually. So I think let's just understand what sits behind it. Are you talking about financial support for travel, or are you talking coach support locally, or coach support at event? What do you mean by support?
Well, anything. I mean, I've asked the question, and so far I've been offered a 250. I mean, as a lot of the performance sailors, I think a sort of an allowance towards driving lessons or something of £250, but there previously was a travel grant the last couple of years, but there is nothing. So we've had to finance and resource the entire programme ourselves, and you know that comes at some considerable sacrifice from the parents. So you know, I think particularly, I mean, I'm being a bit selfish, but our two sailors, I think, are really flying the flag for Scotland. They're the only Scottish sailors in that cohort and only ones for some years. And how can that be sustainable for ordinary parents who are, you know, we've got a 1,000-mile round trip per weekend and trips abroad, and you know, it's just a huge burden, and we are prepared to obviously support them, but what can RYA Scotland do to help?
So we and Jamie, stop me if I go off here, but we generally do not support individual athletes. Our system does not allow us to do that. What we do is we look to put a structure in place that gets the sailors to ultimately where RYA is and beyond, Susan. So you know, we don't have the funds to continually pay for individuals' travel to either training in Weymouth or overseas. It has always been the way for the last 40 years that Scottish sailors have travelled south at an enormous cost in terms of time and money. But our system is there to essentially deliver sailing locally, or if we take overseas camps, and I think RYA was part of one of them at Christmas last year. And we're looking to do more of these over the coming years. But Jamie, I don't know if you want to add to that, just in terms of the work you've been doing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Hamish. Thank you, Susan, for the question. Really appreciate it. I think we can all acknowledge that it's kind of sustainability of finance within kind of sailing is inevitably expensive, and we do definitely appreciate, first of all, kind of the parental kind of difficulties surrounding that. So thank you for bringing it to our attention, and thank you for what you do for providing for your own sailors. And one thing I will go on to mention is obviously we do have an elite grant process that we can go through, and we are going through. As I mentioned, we're kind of bringing that to the committee, which will hopefully provide some financial stability for kind of delivery of kind of RYA and Andrew's program. But furthermore than that, we have to acknowledge that it is a difficult climate, and kind of where there was previously ultimately kind of local support from councils and stuff, these pots are slowly drying up. Things like the Robertson Trust that used to be in place and not kind of providing as they once were. But I'll go back a little bit to kind of maybe a little bit of what Brian said about looking for sponsorship and stuff like that. This is another avenue that we are kind of looking towards investigating and seeing whether or not we can financially kind of help through sponsorship of other organisations. But yeah, I think that's where we're at currently. And obviously, as I've mentioned previously, to any of our sailors in our programme, come pick up the phone, have a conversation. It may take some time every now and again to work through the process to get a good answer and a valuable answer, but we'll work hard to make sure we get that for you.
Yeah, I mean, one suggestion I had was a mentor for them, and I think I've mentioned that previously to Hamish, just in passing, that I think that might be quite a good scheme. But anyway, I'll leave it at that because I don't want so many other aspects to this, but that was just thanks for both of your contributions.
No, brilliant. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for bringing it to the table. As I say, it's definitely a difficult climate, and anything we can do to support, we will. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Susan. It is the perennial challenge. I'm not actually sure how some of our sailors have managed historically, and I think I'm right in saying that is the cost is one of the key factors that's been looked at in the pathway review, because we recognise, I think there's a great so you know Nick Scott, who's in charge of racing in the UK, used to be performance manager up here. You know, he'll happily admit that if he's got two children, if one of them says they want to follow their uncle to the Olympics, he doesn't know how he can afford it. And that is a problem. So we do need to do more on this space. But I appreciate the question, Susan, and I think regrettably we don't have a great set of answers around it, but it won't stop us trying. So appreciate it. Any more questions? I had a quick flick through the list a minute ago and I didn't see any hands up. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds. I'm scanning the list. I don't see any hands, so I think I'm going to move to close us out. There, hopefully, I was expecting the communications address there. Anyway, so there's some contact details for people to get in touch. Always, I think it's been said by a couple of people, always delighted to hear from you. We are here to support you. Please reach out. Quite often we have answers, sometimes we don't, but we can go and work harder on those areas. Just keep the channels of communications open. That's what I would probably ask. Other than to also say thank you very much for your time you've given us this evening, another 45 minutes all in. I hope you found it was of value. I certainly enjoyed listening to all the reports, and say frankly, I look forward to seeing some of you soon out in the water. But all the very best, and thanks again for everything that you all do for our sport. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you.